Hey guys, I hope you were dancing because I was. Deja knows I love to dance. So welcome to We Are ACEDS. I'm Maribel Rivera, an independent marketing and event strategist and the Senior Director of Community Relations at ACEDS. During today's live stream, if you would like to share any feedback or if you have a question or comments, anything, please submit in the comments either on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. We'll be responding to those, or if you want to just say hi, you can do that too, and we'll be sure to respond back. And if you love what we're talking about, please hit share, or provide any reactions, tell some of your friends to join us. This week, I'm joined by a special guest, Melina Efstathiou. Melina is the head of litigation technology at Eversheds Sutherland and located in UK. Hi, Melina.
Hello. Hi, Maribel. Hi, everyone. How are you?
Hi. Thank you so much for joining me on We Are ACEDS today. How is everything? How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I mean, the weather is really trying to break my spirit. I think it's official over in London. It's already autumn. We skipped summer. We typically always do. That season is cancelled, but overall, I'm keeping very well. And I promise first time I will have the honor of actually seeing you in person. We will do that dance because it did keep me a little bit motivated.
I love it. It's awesome to start off the day or an interview, right, with just a little bit of energy and
just a little bit.
Yeah, and that's what we're all about here. I wanted to talk a little bit more about you. Here at We Are ACEDS, it's all about spotlighting members of our legal community and getting to know them. So you are at Eversheds Sutherland, but prior to that, you had held roles at legal vendors and law firms. I wanted you to just share a little bit with our audience on your background because it is so diverse.
Yes, of course. So I am a lawyer at heart and always in principle. So I am a criminal defense attorney. I think I said it in a US, friendly way. I come from the area of financial investigations and serious fraud, and I transitioned into technology through document review and the arena of electronic discovery some 10 years ago. So yes, I have practically worked in most vendors, in-house for law firms, out of the house for law firms, anything that you can possibly think of. And prior to joining Eversheds Sutherland, my most recent role was with Relativity when I was working there as a senior customer success manager.
And I know I gave you some questions in preparation for this, but I'd love to know what made you decide to move into the legal technology realm from where you first started?
I'd love to say it was a eureka moment, but actually in my life, it happened rather organically. It had to do with the nature of the cases that I was working in, particularly in serious fraud. And we were working with pieces of software that were trying to intelligently piece things together in terms of timelines and chronologies. So the more I was getting involved in that and some multilingual document reviews, the more I started thinking, there must be a career behind this. This looks fairly interesting. I've always had the technology bug anyway, and I started looking into it in greater detail. Relativity was the first platform I used in terms of actually being a document reviewer myself. So I wanted to find out the nuts and bolts and everything that was happening behind this. And before you know it, I moved things around and I combined my legal expertise and essentially my love for law with my love for technology, and I became a project manager in electronic discovery.
Interesting. And it's funny because it seems to happen that way for everyone. It's not a eureka movement, but more of they love law, but all of a sudden this technology piece becomes so interesting and inviting, and they seem to just move into that area and fall in love with that even more.
Yeah.
You recently joined our ACEDS UK board as Director of Marketing. Thank you so much. We're so excited. I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about that and why you volunteered for the board role and what impact you want to make on the UK chapter itself, but also on a global level with ACEDS, because as a chapter leader, you get more involved with what we do globally.
Absolutely. I think think in this greater arena overall, when you reach a particular level of seniority, it's not often that you feel quite excited and challenged when you see something being posted. So when I saw this particular position being open and that we actually had to go through a proper application process, it got me really, really excited, particularly the time when I was asked to pitch myself and what I had to contribute. For me, and it had a lot to do with my fairly recent exposure to the certification through ACEDS as well, it was particularly around the educational and the training piece that our chapter, and overall in collaboration with the greater chapters and the global organization, had to offer. Kind of like me returning a little bit back to the industry. You know, you've put on the hours, you've put on the mileage. Now it's time that people can actually learn by you. And I just wanted to contribute more on that level, if that makes sense.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that whole application process? I love our UK chapter board. They're absolutely amazing at what they do with the chapter there. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that whole process and what you thought of it overall. Like, was it grueling? Was it was it a fun process?
It was a very interesting one because I kind of knew half of the members of the board already through obviously having cross paths, like working, you know, on opposing sides or on the same side even, and what have you. But I did not approach any of them on that particular level. So I went through the application, but what I found interesting about it was that it wasn't just you attach your CV, they look at your skill set, basically, had you done this? Thank you very much. Let's do an interview. It was when I was invited to write a short paragraph about my strengths and what I would bring to the table that I thought, oh, these people actually are testing me. You know, they're not just taking it at face value, oh, you have X amount of years in the industry. So I remember writing it and then kind of rewriting it. And I remember sending it back to Claire, one of my fellow board members, really, really proudly with a grin in my face. And I didn't put any hashtags as a signature, but I was saying, I'm really, really excited in case I didn't say this. And if words can convey my face, this is what it looks like. It just felt very interactive, and overall you did feel that, joking aside, that you were part of you would be part of an experienced panel, but equally even the people that were competing for those bespoke 2 positions in the board had so much to offer. Kind of felt like you were already getting a little bit of an acknowledgement and recognition of your contribution before even getting selected, even if you hadn't been selected for the process.
So given all of that whole process that you had to go through, and Claire says it was a great application, so that means you did amazing. Given all of that, what do you want to contribute? What are you looking for? Like, what is going to drive you over the next year? Do you have some personal goals around being part of that board?
I think so. I mean, there were 2 key things, obviously, with everything turning sideways with lockdown and everything being completely remote. We saw incredible value immediately behind vlogs, podcasts, and anything that we could potentially do to promote awareness around technology, talk about industry trends, and overall just anything that we can basically do for the neophytes in the industry, or actually even the veterans in there. We could do it through those channels. So one of my key areas of focus would have been through podcasts and just like education and training and continuous education through those channels. And the other piece that was really close to my mission had to do with bridging the cross-jurisdictional, if you'd like, gap, and making sure we have a better understanding of cross-jurisdictional cases, workflows that could be applicable to both or could vary and for what reasons, all GDPR-related issues. Again, this was beautifully coinciding with my experience with the actual certification, as I was part of the beta exam that when ACEDS were trying to make it less US focused and more EU applicable. So I very much enjoyed, you know, the drafting of new questions, not drafted by me, as in when I was in receipt of them in the very, 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 challenging exam in the best of ways. Yes. So those would be the 2 key areas, I think, that I would like to focus on.
Well, since we're talking about certifications, and congratulations on passing the beta. Yeah, not everyone passed, but we did have a lot of people who said it was grueling who did pass. What I did want to talk about a little bit, and in preparation for all of this, is you are a lawyer, but you also have your relativity certification, and you also hold your ACEDS. What prompted you to get those, and how are they benefiting you on the long term? And then I'll probably ask another question after that, as far as you being a lawyer, right? Especially in the UK, why those certifications are important, because a lot of lawyers don't believe in getting those additional certifications. But I'll start with the first ones. Like, what prompted you?
What prompted me? I think when each and every one of us essentially sit for more technical, more platform-based certifications, it is ultimately about developing and solidifying our aptitude and our excellence in that specific platform. Speaking of the RCA and other relativity, related certifications, I mean, that essentially walks you through all the ins and outs of the platform, and it's a more hands-on exposure to what you need to do to be a properly certified administrator of the platform. When I made the leap for ACEDS through the incentive by my own boss internally at Eversheds Sutherland, I may add, it had to do more about, this is actually a certification that grasps the entire EDRM and actually properly tests your knowledge around particular key components of the EDRM from a theoretical perspective. And even when you started taking the test questions, good God, and trying to understand how different the nature of the exam is, you could see they are properly speaking to me as a professional, almost as a quasi-lawyer, quasi-technologist, and they're asking me to properly, basically digest all of these scenarios and then form an opinion, versus I click 6 buttons, I follow 6 steps, and basically I can put a load file through a particular platform. Happy days. It was almost like the only medal of honor that we currently have as proper legal technology experts. That's the way I saw it anyway.
How having those certifications, have they benefited you on your career path and professionally?
Absolutely. I aside from the fact that, and again, this is not very frequent, the more senior you become in any industry, I was genuinely really proud of myself for passing it. I felt kind of back in the days that I got qualified as a solicitor, and essentially I passed the bar. It genuinely created opportunities, aside from the fact that it opened my eyes to, broader aspects of the EDRM, making me go back and revisit particular things. It made me feel even more well-equipped to articulate my guidance and my opinions around particular things. For example, around identification and preservation of ESI, ethical considerations around e-discovery, topics that I'll be perfectly honest, I don't think any other certification touches on, and it's really, really important to go back and examine those things, because ultimately, as an expert in this industry, you will be called upon having that 360, very educated opinion. It did open to me a very beautiful position in the ACEDS UK chapter as a board member, which and not that the certification, essentially was a free ticket into it, but I do genuinely think that it carries some validity. And I was very proud to add those initials next to my surname, because, it's not long enough. We need even more letters after it. So, yeah. So
I did know that. I was noticing. I think it's LLM, and then the RCA, and then the ACEDS. And I was like, I love it. I like the ongoing. So talking about being a solicitor, and we frequently hear, some lawyers are always like, I don't need to have a certification in this. I've passed the bar, I have a JD, or I've passed the solicitor exam. Why do you think why would you recommend, right, a certification like either the RCA or other technology certifications, or the ACEDS, to lawyers or other legal professionals?
I think I've always been a preacher overall of gaining full experience through practice, and I still think it's probably one of the best means through being completely hands-on on projects. So even if someone doesn't hold necessarily a technical certification, it's not that you're going to say they don't know what they're doing in this specific arena. Where I think certifications start playing a completely different role is the fact that they translate in each and every one of us almost speaking the same language. There's something about it them becoming identifiable, like a code thing. So very similar to whatever an MD would have next to their initials, or, you know, someone that has finished like their doctorate or anything like that. In the technology sector, they started becoming more and more common, and therefore you knew that individuals that have sat through that very strenuous process, each and every certification has its own path, that does actually bring something different to the table, if not for anything else, because they had to go through a specific curriculum. They had to have their knowledge and their understanding tested, and it's ultimately, like I said, it translates technology into a common code for us.
So you talked a little bit about how grueling the ACEDS exam was. What advice would you give to others, right, looking to get their certification and take the exam, the ACEDS or the RCA?
Very different advice for each of them. If I could focus on ACEDS, I would say, first off, if you have any doubt, absolutely endorse the scheme, and I would definitely encourage each and every one of you to sit for this certification. I think it requires dedication and engagement. I remember sitting in study groups and reading practically every evening and even weekends and doing test rounds and what have you. And being a lawyer, I love reading and I love being put to a challenge. So that bug never leaves you. So I think through determination and just a key focus around the arenas that it explores, that is in all essence the recipe for success. It's not so much the time commitment, as in I know that it's got some guidelines about potentially 6 months or even 8 months being dedicated to it. I'm very lucky to have been able to do it in a much more limited time frame, but it is about trying to engage with the mechanism of the exam, going back and forth with the amazing support resources that are being given to you when you have naturally questions as you're progressing through the studying for the certification. And then of course it is a 7-hour exam, so do not have any liquids before it, I should say. It was extremely challenging because we could not do it in a specific center, in an exam center. Everything was remotely, so you had to have everything checked in your room and what have you, and then you were waiting for the lovely bot on the other side to give you permission to run to the bathroom for 3 seconds so that you can come back and continue. But it's a 7-hour exam. Take your time, I would say, and digest the information properly and understand what the question is actually asking of you, because they can be a tad tricky when it comes to their interpretation.
So, Claire has a question. Did you learn anything through the ACEDS studying that you hadn't come across in practice?
I think I did, in terms of particular methodologies that are more applicable in the US, but what I mean is that they're very much alive and very, 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 basically very common in use, that are completely non-applicable of this side of the pond. It would immediately be no. For example, I remember reading around particular methodologies of deduplication and talking about duplicate suppression, which is something that we never utter on this side of the pond because, no. And I remember reading about it and saying, well, that would not be applicable, etc. Anyway, fast forward a few months, I'm in this disclosure exercise on this side of the pond, obviously. And funnily enough, it became applicable. And then I remember chatting to my fellow ACEDS members in my team, because there were 4 of us sitting the exam all together. And I'm very, very proud to say that all 4 of us actually passed the exam. And we were all saying, oh, this is ACEDS. This brings back memories. This is from the handbook. And we were all like, it goes back to the common language that I was referring to. But yes, it did. I would say that overall, also things around the greater legal framework around discovery or disclosure, whatever you want to call it, it definitely opened my eyes to a few more parameters that I just think through the trivialism of the cases and the pressure that we have in this industry with the deadlines and what have you every single day, we tend to forget or overlook even.
Yes. So given all of that and the studying you had to do, everything you had to do to prepare, and I know that you are, I've listened to the podcast and we'll talk about that a little bit more, but how do you continue like educating yourself and staying up to date, learning what's going on in the industry, just so that you're on top of everything for your role, especially because as head of litigation, technology there, you've got to be like ahead of the curve on what's going on in the industry.
I think so. I try to keep as informed and as updated as possible with newsletters and particular articles. I have subscribed in, I don't even know, practically everything. And essentially they populate in my inbox and the catchy titles will totally get there. I'll put a red flag and then I'll make sure to make time to read through them. As again, joking aside, there are so many experts in this industry and there's always something new to learn and someone new to learn from, even if it is to say, yes, that is exactly what I would have done as well, but thank you for making me feel, if not anything else, sane. Equally, this is actually one of the favorite parts of my job within Eversheds Sutherland. I make it almost my mission to be learning, being head of litigation technology, learning from the lawyers themselves. So I really, really try to get a thorough understanding as to, did technology work? If not, why? Could there have been a better way of adopting technology or a better way that we could have formulated the workflows around particular things? So there's a little bit about that as, yes, we all need to be 3 steps ahead of the game, but let's be honest, nobody can keep up with technology. So it's always emerging tech and understanding what are the current trends. But I think it's equally, let's make sure that we are examining what we're doing in the present and make sure that everything that is happening from a workflow perspective or a guidance perspective gives our lawyers, our clients overall, anyone, the best possible support that they could have through the application of tech.
Well, with all of that, how are you seeing things? What are the trends that you're seeing? And then first, let me back up a little bit. I'd love to know, what's the first newsletter? Is it Chris Dale's e-disclosure blog that comes into what is like the number one newsletter in your inbox?
It's actually the artificial lawyer one that I really that I get, and I just find it to be incredibly intriguing because it explores different arenas, and quite often it just merely educates me on things that I didn't even know were either happening. There's one too many discovery, mergers, acquisitions, as I call it, the big shark swallowing the little fish, etc., etc. So you're struggling to keep up a little bit with the industry, and then you hear about these amazing things that happen applicable with banks or with corporate entities, and it just educates you. That's in the ACEDS newsletter that I am very, very, very grateful for. Reminds me about everything that is happening in specific chapters and overall on a global perspective. So, the webinars that I would like to attend, and overall if there's any publications or anyone speaking on a live basis. But yeah, I think those would be the key 2 things that catch my eye in my inbox every day.
And then the ACEDS UK vlog is the next one, correct?
I mean, I didn't want to toot our own horn, and that goes without saying. Anything ACEDS UK chapter, absolutely. I mean, we're all James and Brian essentially kick things off with an amazing infusion into that, and all of us are going to follow up with extremely interesting topics. And I think it's yet another way of showing how we can offer our experiences, if not anything else, in the industry to the greater audience.
Excellent. So with all of the stuff that you're reading, you're getting in your inbox, what are the trends that you think are coming up? And I know like artificial intelligence, everyone's talking about, but are there other things that you can see?
There is definitely a constant shifting of the access to the earlier cases. I found that the earlier phases, I should say, of a case. What I mean by that is that we've been focusing so much into the actual review and analysis and everything predictive coding and how many times can we essentially make the engines make the decisions for us so we can blissfully go away on holiday or something along those lines. I find, particularly with the importance around legal costs, time and cost efficiency, you find that now our end clients and our legal teams as well, they would like to have more efficient workflows around earlier insights into the data and earlier investigation phases of our cases. So this is where I see the arena currently becoming more demanding from the end client perspective, and equally for the technology to be able to deliver even more insightful workflows in I suppose, what we would call early case assessment broadly.
And just switching over to some of that, right, the trends and things. Eversheds, you host or co-host a podcast for Eversheds Sutherland. And could you share a little bit more about the podcast and the goals that you guys have for that?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a broader range of podcasts that our litigation and dispute management practice group holds, and they vary with a lot of really important topics. And within there, we try to, again, infuse it with technology-related topics. So we have had 3 so far, I believe. And the goal behind it is to be able to share our lessons from particular cases in terms of tech-enabled approaches and talk behind the benefits and the challenges when working with technology. How can lawyers essentially free up much of their very valuable time and be able to work with technology in a much more intuitive way? And also kind of simplify the relatively jargony way of sometimes technology might feel when we're talking about e-discovery components and trial preparation components as well, and make it a little bit more relatable to the not so tech savvy audience. Does that make sense?
Total sense, because I've been in preparation for today. I've been listening to the podcast and gathering some things, and I know you've talked about things like multi-jurisdictional e-discovery and litigation, multi-language. Those are some of the things. Is there a favorite episode that you have so far? I know it's only 3, or is there something coming up that you're planning?
I wouldn't call it a favorite, because that would not be, my reports will have my head on a stick. What I will say though, is that I still keep really, really fond the first episode that we essentially delivered, because it was around women and empowering women in technology. It was released on International Women's Day. Being a woman myself and wanting to inspire more young women to be getting involved in technology, I still think that has just a little bit of a special spot in my heart. No disrespect to the boys, of course.
No disrespect whatsoever. And I want to share, because I wrote this down specifically for today, because I listened to that podcast as well, in addition to the other 2. And I want to share a quote from that when you closed out that podcast, which is, and just so you know, Melina, this is near and dear to my heart. I lead the diversity initiative and diversity inclusion initiative here at ACEDS globally. I do a lot around women's empowerment and other things. So your quote when you closed out that really wonderful episode was, "We want to say to all women out there, there's nothing that cannot be achievable. There's nothing that is too big for your shoes, no matter how tiny they might be. There is nothing that you cannot achieve. Do your best, claim what you think is yours, and if anything, don't fear to embrace sectors that were male dominated, or even say more identified closely with men because of stereotypes." You closed it out with that. It was so powerful. It was so brilliant. You also talked about how tiny you are. That I left a lot out, but I really encourage everyone to listen to that one, because it was a really interesting and powerful one for International Women's Day. So thank you so much. I took a lot away from that.
It's very kind of you. Thank you.
You're welcome. So my question there would be, how do you think we can continue to help more women forward, right? You're a leader within your organization, and you're also managing up and out, I assume. So how can we help women forward in an industry that has been predominantly male dominated, both in legal and in law? I'm sorry, technology and in law.
Yeah, no, of course, of course. I genuinely think women are not short of ambition at all. It's more about particular roles that have been traditionally, as we were mentioning, labeled with men and what have you. How do we keep women motivated? In all honesty, I think it's only simple by carrying on, like raising awareness, promoting the good word, showing that by supporting one another, there are wonderful things that we can achieve individually and collaboratively. And whilst I am very grateful to many, many male figures in my career, and I'm still learning through quite a few of them, I should say, there's just something special when you just feel that you've expanded not just your skill set and anything, you're basically accomplishing something that somebody may have said, no, I wouldn't go that way. No, that might be a little bit too much for you. You might be too much of this or too little of that. And just try to silence those whispers and just, the world's your oyster. Like I said, anything you want to do, please feel free to do it.
I love that. So we're getting to the end, right? We've had a good half hour together. As we wrap up, I'd love to know what makes you feel inspired or like your best self.
What makes me feel inspired? I would say most definitely the younger generations that I am working with, and I am very blessed to have two teams that are reporting to me, and each and every one of them are very, very unique, and they are in different stages of their lives. And I find that when I've had one too many deadlines, one too many emails, as you and I were talking before, one too many Zoom meetings, the things that keep me motivated and inspires when I actually get to explain and take it back to the basics to some younger members. Why? Because in all honesty, it reminds me of how I was when I was at their particular age and stage and level of work, and how challenging and intimidating those things with technology felt, insurmountable sometimes. And I always say, just breathe. We are all here to work on this collaboratively. Nothing is happening. Let me walk you through it. And there's just a little thing that puts a spring in my step when that happens.
I love that. I feel the same. I have some mentees that are the younger generation that I've been working with, and it feels really good and I'm learning from them as well, but they inspire me at the same time that they tell me I inspire them. So I can understand that totally. There's always something I think I can learn from them, given it a soft skill, right, or a technical skill, or something else.
Absolutely.
What should I ask you that I have not asked you today?
What my favorite book is?
Yes.
What my dream job would be? I don't know. How I survived this pandemic?
Yes. Let's start at your favorite book.
My favorite book is Alice in Wonderland. I absolutely love it. And I do often think that my life is kind of trying to mimic it, like on occasion. But yes, that is my favorite book.
I won't even ask who the White Rabbit is in your life then.
I'm definitely the Mad Hatter. I can tell you that much. Yeah, I think so. I think I've identified with that figure. Yes.
How have you survived the pandemic? And I know you've talked about it a little bit in some of the things that I've seen you post, and on LinkedIn, because I've been following and stalking you, softly stalking you online. But I'd love to hear a little bit more, especially I know the UK has gone in and out of lockdown several times.
I mean, I think it has been incredibly challenging. I will not lie. Sometimes I've managed to deal with things in a more successful and a more productive way, and some other times I literally just felt, okay, today, no. The computer says no, the system is down. I simply just want to completely, disconnect. I think for people like myself, because I live in a country that I actually don't originate from, and the pandemic floored me and completely made it impossible for me to be able to see my family. That has been one of the most challenging things. It's coming over to 2 years or 2 years and a half that I haven't seen my family, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that I will be able to towards the end of the summer. But overall, meditation, affirmations, trying to reestablish some boundaries with work-life balance. Again, sometimes you'll get it right. Sometimes the demands of the job and the demands of life are simply there that you cannot possibly say no. And I would say just looking a little bit more inwards, reevaluating, reassessing a few more things, and hopefully now that we are hopefully towards the actual end of the tunnel, coming out a stronger person or an even stronger person. That's the way, I think.
I will have to share with you, if you like R&B music, I will share with you affirmations that are R&B style, and it's a great way to start your morning.
Brilliant. I already love that. Please and thank you. Please and thank you.
You're welcome. Last question before we go. And I have to ask, because if I don't ask, I might get in trouble with Mike Quartararo.
Oh, wow.
Stones or Beatles?
I mean, I'd say the Stones are closer to my rocky, rebel-y nature, but the Beatles are my mom's favorite band. I've grown up listening to the Beatles and my mom humming in the kitchen or taking them everywhere. So if, the jury was out, they've come back, here it is, the Beatles.
What is your favorite Stones song?
Miss You. Miss You. It is, yes. Yeah. I
we'll
really
have
love
to
that
play
song.
that when we get together, we will play that song. So
absolutely. Absolutely.
Very appropriate. Melina, thank you so much for joining us today at We Are ACEDS. It has been a complete pleasure. I can't believe we've been almost 40 minutes together. It doesn't seem like 15 minutes has passed, but you've shared so much, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate you joining us. For everyone else, thank you again for joining us. I'm Maribel Rivera. I was joined by Melina Efstathiou, right? Did I say it correctly?
99%. Almost there. Okay, but thank you so much for having me. Keep practicing. Keep practicing.
I will.
Thanks a lot.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. If you haven't subscribed to get updates, please feel free to follow ACEDS on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter. You'll find our ACEDS UK vlog is on our playlist there, so you can stay up to date and subscribe to that. You can also find, we have, eDiscovery Leaders Live with George Sosha from Reveal Brainspace on Friday. Every Tuesday, we have Kelly Twigger of eDiscovery Assistant and ESI attorneys with Case Law of the Week. Please follow, subscribe, and if you ever have any questions for Melina, feel free, or anyone on the ACEDS UK board, feel free to reach out to them at uk@aceds.org. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day. Bye.